Hey, paisans, the time has come. On the air since 2009, the independently produced, non-FCC compliant champ of video game talk podcasting. Here comes Tiger Claw Radio. Here's your host, Critical Failure.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Critical Failure. You're listening to Tiger Claw Radio. My goodness. It's the birthday episode because my birthday. It's also the coronavirus episode because everyone's panicking. Lots of stuff going on this week. My goodness, what a week it's been. We're gonna play a couple more tracks from the Journey Through Generations Real Fama Tracker album. We've been playing the past couple weeks. It's got 25 songs on it. It's free. We're going to check that out a little bit more. And then when we come back, we're going to talk some video games. All right? Let's kick things off with Fabulous Reindeer. That's it. On a Mission. This is track 16. You're listening to Tiger Claw Radio. Back in the studio. My goodness, it feels good. It's late Friday night. This is being put together on the 7th. Oh, it's not Friday night at all. It's actually Saturday night. Yesterday was my birthday, so we're going through the Vancast leading up to it. We're going to kick things off with the first Vancast. This was recorded this past Monday on the 2nd. All right, so this is me starting off a week knowing that it's going to culminate in my birthday. It was good times. It was good times, and we went over some fun stuff. So let's go there now. You're listening to Tiger Claw Radio. Good morning, everybody. It's Monday. It's the Vancast. 30 degrees outside. My goodness, it's cold. It is cold. At least it's dry. Weirdly enough, we got 6:18. It's a little earlier. Only by a couple of minutes than I'm used to getting out. But I'm starting to see more sun in the morning as the spring makes its way into town. we get a little bit more sunshine, just a little bit more every day, which is very nice. So, first Vancast of the week, I tend to kind of go over what the weekend has held for me and that sort of stuff. Well, this is what I've been playing. This is, that kind of thing. A little bit more retrospective and a little bit less looking forward. So let's talk about it. I guess we'll do Game Maker first. So I worked on a Game Maker project probably like a year ago, maybe even more. This was never anything I was going to release. It was just like my son and I were hanging out. And so I started working on a little platformer. So I could show him, hey, this is what Game Maker is. This is what you can do. Believe it or not, we've got all the development tools to make a video game right here, just you and me. And we can do top to bottom everything. So we drew the graphics, these little squares, and we'd made like a little yellow star, and you were trying to get to the yellow star, and it's very stripped down. And I put old Starship Amazing tunes in the background, and you played a little blue square, so we called it Sacre Bleu. That was the name of the platformer we made. So just last night, my son and I were hanging out, as we often do just before bedtime. And he was like, whatever happened to that game, that platformer we made? I had no idea what he was talking about. He's like, yeah, we used to work on a platformer together. And we got the engine all built, and it was really just down to making levels. Let's make some levels. I was like, what? Okay. So we dug this thing up. I had completely forgotten about it. So that was pretty sweet to see. So I have a Game Maker game that's actually fully functioning. It's got graphics and music and gameplay and everything. And 6 functioning levels, and we were working on the 7th. And I think that was where we left off. On the 7th level, excuse me, we wanted to break out of the normal window size and make it so that the levels would scroll. And we had some issues doing that. It was squishing down the enlarged level to fit the screen rather than actually scrolling. I know it supports scrolling. I know it can't be that hard. I just have to look up how to do it. So yeah, that's the Game Maker game. I don't know if it develops into something decent and playable, then sure, I'll release it. We'll throw it up there for free if anybody wants to go for the platforming adventure of Sacre Bleu. But it's a good time. I forgot how fun making a game can be when all the chips are falling into place. I used to make games in a program called Click and Play back in the late 90s. Click and Play still around, but it's changed names a couple of times as they put out modern iterations. It's called Multimedia Fusion now. But back in the day, yeah, Click and Play, sure. There was no script yet, you're right. You did have to program, but you programmed it by pulling commands out of a list. So there was very little syntax errors. The upside was you didn't have to worry about syntax errors and misspelling things or forgetting semicolons or anything like that, like you typically would in, say, like a C++ sheet of code. The downside was, because you weren't typing it and you were pulling it from a list, programming things took a lot longer than they typically do. And you'd be like, all right, I'm trying to put in a case scenario, but I can't find the case scenario button. And that kind of thing could lead to frustration. So, of course, it wasn't perfect. But we were able to do some fun stuff in Click and Play when I was a kid. Learned a little bit about game creation. I wish I had all those old projects, though. But most of this was done in the dial-up days with 3.5-inch floppy disks. And most of those old Click and Play games are on my dad's computer at my mom's house, and my mom doesn't really want anybody to touch that. So, what are you going to do? So this was really like a blast from the past to put this little game together. Weirdly enough, So here's the thing. Game Maker, in its heyday, was really expensive because you weren't just buying like a little software suite where you could put games together. You were buying like a commercial development studio. So they wanted to charge you money, like enough money to, like it, not like you were buying, something from Steam, more like you were making an investment to open a game studio. So Game Maker Professional was like $100, $200 or something like that. I got a hold of Game Maker Professional in like one of those Humble Bundle things. So I think it was like $1 for me, but it was very weird. The price point was high enough to block out like a hobbyist developer like myself. So that was something that always kind of sucked. I understand it's a development suite. And development suites, are development intensive. And therefore, makes sense for them to cost a little bit extra money. But come on now, $60 makes sense. Anything over 100 is crazy. And then once you buy it, you got to buy licensing for the platform you want to make it on. Unless you're just releasing it on Windows, right? If I want to take my little game and release it on, Android, I think the Android plugin is another like $200 or $300. And all it does is just add an export button to the file menu. And it sucks even more because I'm using the original Game Maker, which is off the market now. You can't buy it anymore. It's Game Maker 2. So you make the investment to get one of these development suites. Hey, brother, you better get your project done because that platform is going to be replaced, son. You know what I'm saying? So, it is what it is. It's very different from, say, like the RPG Maker scene, where we've got all of the old RPG makers, and they're, for the most part, they're all for sale on Steam, and they're priced appropriately. Like, if you want to download RPG Maker and just toy around with it, then get one that's a couple generations old. You can get it for like $20 regular price. Game Maker isn't like that. They phased the old one out. Oh, excuse me. But, it is what it is. I'm not really a game developer, so this is just like my thoughts on like a quick glance at some of the less coding intensive game development tools. Because when it comes down to it, you can download a C++ compiler for free, and the C++ compiler, a little sprite editor, and then there you go. Those are the real professional game maker tools, I guess. So when I got up this morning, I sat down, and since my son wasn't up, I didn't mess with Game Maker. That was more like a last night thing. Instead, I started poking around with Morrowind. So you guys know, if you've been following the channel, that I'm a fan of Morrowind. Love the game. A couple of years back, I tried to run a Monday night weekly series. You guys remember Monday Night Morrowind? It was an experiment to see how a weekly series would work. Just something that came out every week at the same time and the same day. And it was like a little half-hour Let's Play of Morrowind. So when I stopped doing Monday Night Morrowind, that was really the end of... Okay, fine, I'll go. That was really the end of me playing Morrowind. So I loaded it up, I think out of the blue, recently. I think this might even still been with my son, and I was showing him what Morrowind was. It's like, hey, yeah, see this, and then you got this. I loaded up a save, and it turned out I had a save file that's like wandering around the middle of Valmora. if you're familiar with Morrowind. And I was kind of showing him, yeah, this is a big city, you know. All of the things you can see are things you can pick up, but you got to make sure that nobody's looking. There's people everywhere, and you can do all these things. And my son was like, yeah, he was digging it. It's pretty cool, man. But here's... excuse me. Oh, boy, excuse me. Here's where I misstepped. The save file that I opened was entitled Mayhem, in all caps. And I didn't think much of it. And I was okay, wandering around Balmora. Nice to have a save file, right? So I don't have to start at the very beginning, at least. Jeez Louise. Everything looked in place. Okay. So I opened up the journal. And I was like, alright, let's see where I was in the game. What was the last thing I did? Okay, so it was like, do a little favor for the guy, one of the guys at the Mage Guild. Alright. So it's essentially like, okay, go to, XYZ dungeon and collect the item and bring it back. Great. So we now resume the game where I left off. So I went to the dungeon, which was like a tomb. And you get a very specific skull in the tomb. And I had a great time in that dungeon, man. Hadn't played Morrowind in a long time. No cameras were rolling. This was not a Let's Play. This was just me and the Elder Scrolls. Going at it once again. Back at it again at Krispy Kreme here in Elder Scrolls. So I got the skull, brought it back to the Mage Guild, and the person at the Mage Guild was thankful or whatever. Did the quest turn in? And it was she was like, all right, take these papers to Cassius Cosatus, and you can continue the main story from there. All right, we are on the trail. So that's the Spy Master's house. You go back to the Spy Master's house, and he's like one of the main story characters for the first half of the game. So I went back to his house, and he was dead. Oh dear, what have I done? So the save file was called Mayhem because apparently my goal was to secretly kill everyone in Balmora. Starting with the main storyline guy. I was like, oh gosh. I just spent an hour playing Morrowind. Doing a quest I can't turn in. So I started checking out some of the other houses in town. And sure enough, I had gone into the houses one by one and started killing all the residents. A lot of dead bodies. They were hidden. To my credit, I was cleaning up after myself. A lot of dead people. That sucked. It sucked because I have a bunch of other save files. I even have a save file entitled Monday Night Morrowind, which I think is from 2016 or 2015 now. Golly, was that series really 5 years ago? Gosh. But those all used mods. So when I went to, load it up, I got the warning that was like, yeah, you had a whole stack of mods on here that you don't have installed, bro. Oh, geez. Okay, so if I want to play Morrowind again, that means I have to go back and figure out what my essential mods were, get the mods I like, and then start from scratch. So I went over to the Nexus mods, where all the Elder Scrolls mods are. I think regardless of what version of version of Elder Scrolls you're playing, Nexus mods is the place to be. So I went over to Nexus mods, and I had to recover my account because it had been so long since I've been there. And I spent the morning perusing Morrowind mods, trying to come up with like a zip file of my essential Morrowind mods, the stuff I want to have installed like bare minimum every time I reinstall the game. So it's just like a quick download my essentials pack and throw it in, and then there you go. So that's what I'm building right now, is my Morrowind mods essentials pack. And without even cruising the site, I remember a couple. One was the weightless arrows mod, I didn't want arrows to take any weight. I think by default an arrow takes like 1/10 of a weight unit or 1/10 of a pound or whatever it is. So if you got 100 arrows, it's going to take up 10 pounds and or weight units in your inventory. Well, there's a mod where all of the weight value of arrows is removed. So you can have 1,000 arrows and it's fine. It doesn't matter. That's one that I like. Another big one that I went looking for and could not find was one that adds a ton of extra money to the shops. I came out of the dungeon when I was playing it the other day, and I had like 800 or 900 gold points worth of gear to sell off. But the pawn shop owner in Balmora only had 700 gold on him at the time. Great. So I got to find another way to fence all this stuff. I don't want to have to do that. I remember my modded version, I'd walk into the pawn shop and they'd have like, 4,000 or 5,000 gold or something like that. Enough that I could empty a dungeon's worth of gear at the pawn shop and be fine. You know? Just how it should be. Oh golly. Yeah, so in my my pack right now, I'm kind of looking at the most popular ones, figuring out what everybody else thinks is an essential mod. I found my weightless arrows mod. I wasn't able to find the shopkeeper mod, but I have some more looking to do. I got texture packs are super popular when it comes to Morrowind. Better faces, better bodies, better skies, better textures, better water, all that stuff. If you sort by most popular, that's what you're going to see. So I wanted to get a couple of those things. Better skies in particular. There was also a mod that I had in the old days that replaced all the loading screens. The splash screens that happen when you load games, they were replaced with alternate versions, which I thought were nicer. They were nicer, and they clearly marked my installation as like a modded installation. Because you would see when you'd load the game, oh, this is different. This version of Morrowind must have been worked on a little bit. So I liked that. So I want to get that back again. But that was great. I enjoyed that quite a bit. Getting excited about playing Morrowind again, which is fun. Because that game is like an old friend at this point. Weird to think it's been 5 years since Monday Night Morrowind. It's weird to think. But yeah, that game never quite made it to the 100-hour club. I think I'm clocked like 87 hours or something into Morrowind. A lot. More than any other Elder Scrolls game for me. I know everybody likes Skyrim. Skyrim's the one that seems to be the most popular at this point. And I never had a problem with Skyrim. I'm not one of these guys that's like, hey man, Morrowind is the best Elder Scrolls, or whatever, or Daggerfall is the best Elder Scrolls. They were different. They had their strong points, but I think Morrowind just clicked with me because I was able to play it at a time in which my computer couldn't run Skyrim. I think I could I remember running Skyrim on like my very old laptop, but the thing was I had to dumb the graphics down so far. I remember thinking, why bother? Why bother? Let's just play an older, easier to run version of Elder Scrolls, and that way it'll feel a little bit more natural, and I can make the jump up when I have a better computer. Well, now I have that better computer, and I think I'm still hooked on Morrowind, to be perfectly honest. But isn't that just the way it goes with these Elder Scrolls games? I mean, they're designed to hook you in for long periods of time and whatnot. So, what a game Morrowind is. My goodness, what a game. So with that, let's see. You give me a second here to get up my recorder app. Wow, we made it 20 minutes. 20 minutes, and my only 2 bullet points were mention Sakura Blue, the platforming game I made in Game Maker with my son, and my issues with my Mayhem save in Morrowind. So that was one that kicked open the floodgates. I'm still messing with Suikoden, by the way, which we talked a little bit about that last week. I want to make Suikoden my return to video game essays, but it's a little tough because I haven't played it in years. So I've got to find a way to play Suikoden on my computer in my office before I can really do that. And I will work on that, and we'll get back on that probably next week. The weekend was really crazy. To be honest, I didn't get a whole lot of video game time. But hopefully we'll fix that in the coming days. And I'll get to play some Suikoden and some Morrowind, and we'll be on our way. Pretty sweet. And with that, boys and girls, I'm going to send you guys back to the studio. See you there. Back again in the studio, where it feels nice, where my work week is over. We now return you to your regularly scheduled weekend. All right, so we are, 26 minutes in? This is about the time. Right about now feels good. This is the time I like to, take a minute to thank the sponsors, right? This is a Patreon-sponsored program. These guys give their resources. That's right. No, don't keep doing it. There we go. Sorry. These people give their resources to make sure we come back every single week. So I like to read their names off in a hall of distinguished gentlemen. They are Hemrock, Sendu, Tecmo Balls, Durabka, and Konstantin Kelman. Thank you guys so much. I hope you're enjoying the party. I also give them early access to the show. They get it as soon as it gets done. And then also, I try to get a little something out every here and there just for the patrons. We did a little extended session of 2 Extreme after that last video came out. And then before that, last month, we had a chiptune compilation thing. And then we got some more stuff coming up in the future. So that's been fun. I've really been trying to put together... do some work on how things are presented for the patrons. I cleaned up the way the tags were done in the Patreon page. So now you can head over there and you can see it's clearly marked where the Patreon exclusive podcasts are and videos and stuff. There's like 12 right now. Different supporter specials you can listen to. So that's cool stuff. So if you're interested in getting in on that party, head over to the Patreon page. And with that, let's get back to the good stuff. We're going to return to our chiptune comp. And let's see. Potato Tan. Oh, yeah, that sounds good. Let's find out what this is together. You're listening to Tiger Claw Radio. More van casting when we come back. back again in the studio. I just want to say what kills me about this album is this is all done in Famitracker. Now, I've done some work in Famitracker, as you guys are aware, under the Green Leo moniker that I like to release music under. I've made some Famitracker songs, and that has been my tool of choice for chiptunes. So it's not like I do chiptunes in a bunch of different things. I do chiptunes there, and then I do, electronic music in LSDJ, and that's pretty much it. But the sounds these guys get out of Famitracker is far and away nothing I could ever reach. And it's weird. The instruments sound different. The mix sounds different. It sounds like they're breaking out of that grid. Whenever I'm messing with Famitracker, there's a clear snap to grid that I'm using. And it feels like they've broken free from that grid, which is what absolutely kills me about this album. It's great stuff. So I've been enjoying going through it a couple of weeks in a row. Hope you guys have been too. So how are we doing? Did we go through? We went through one Bandcast. We got another one. We got two more. Got a lot of Bandcasting this week and a lot of stuff to cover as well. I have two emails from Hemrock. We got comments last week. It's going to be a long show. So I hope you stick with us. So let's head back to the van now. We're going to do the second Bandcast, and we'll see where that takes us. So buckle up and buckle up. I don't know. I kind of went blank on that one, but it happens. What are you going to do? There's no time for me to go back and edit it out. We're going to the van. Oh, jeez, I really should. We're going to the van and Tiger Club Radio. Stick with us. Morning, everybody. It's Tuesday morning. Time for the Vancast. 6:18. It is a nice, beautiful 41 degrees outside. We have... it's a little damp, and the sun is just getting ready to peek up over the trees. Windows are fogged over. Give me a second. I got to roll them down and make sure I can see before I pull out of my spot on the street. All right, we are lined up and ready to depart. Let's get that window rolled up. Throw it in gear. And a hoop and a how and away we go. Ready to go down to the office and do my Tuesday at work. Can we talk about 2 Extreme for a minute? Can I just gush about 2 Extreme on the PS1? You guys have probably saw it go up on my channel. But I sat down this morning with some PS1 stuff. And I was like, let's just see what we can do. I had some issues recording footage recently. Trying to do Resident Evil 5 videos. I wanted to make sure I could still record footage. So I made a little test video of 2 Extreme. Played the snowboarding a little bit, threw it up on the channel. Blast from the past. Oh my goodness. It was just a little, just a little video. It didn't even, the music wasn't working. But, yeah, I forgot that 2 Extreme was actually like a really good game. It's silly to think, because it was like, technologically, it pales in comparison, even to a lot of the other extreme sports games of the PS1 era. It was definitely an early PS1 game. A lot of it was sprite-based. Yes, the environment was 3D, but you're still playing a 2D sprite character. And all the objects on the course, as well as the other racers, were still 2D sprites. So, 3D game, it kind of towed the line. Early 3D game. And then shortly after, you get into the Cool Borders series that's like fully 3D. Oh yeah, and then Street Skater and Tony Hawk for fully 3D skateboarding just a handful of years later. I don't know about rollerblading. I guess we had the Dave Mirra game for bicycling, but 2 Extreme did it all, man. It sure did. All right, so when I fired it up, the date said 1996. Now, I don't remember when we got our PlayStation. It was after 2 Extreme came out, before 3 Extreme came out, because I remember the release of 3 Extreme, getting that the summer it was released. So, 96, huge year in gaming. We would have seen this alongside Suikoden and Tomb Raider and the Resident Evil and Quake, People would have been playing Doom on their consoles, the PS1 Doom and stuff like that. Assault Rigs. Man, Assault Rigs was a great game. Kind of forgot how awesome the PS1 was as a system. I get caught up sometimes thinking about the JRPGs on the PS1 and how long some of those took to play. And yeah, there were awesome JRPGs on the PS1, but what an amazing system. There were some truly awesome games that came out. Truly awesome games that are found among the dime store games these days. Games that you don't have to pay any significant money for. Like Tiny Tank. I think my last dance with the PS1 was retroactively purchasing Tiny Tank like a couple years back. And that was, oh my gosh, that was great. That was a really hard game. That's like a punishingly difficult game. But revisiting it was so much fun. So yeah, 2 Extreme, that's my game of the morning. I remember, I glossed over this in the video, but 2 Extreme's got a feature where you can select your racer, and it's really just different colored t-shirts and backwards baseball caps. But all of the characters have names, and they've all got stats, and all the stats are separate for each event. So there's like 15 different characters. It's something ridiculous. And then on top of that, you can create a character. And by creating a character, that just means like reassigning the statistics and giving a new name to one of the portraits. But there was a time, I remember, where the boys in the neighborhood, me and NG and these 3 kids, Sean, Shane, and Sam, who used to come around. So that made 5 of us. And we all had custom characters in stinking 2 Extreme that we would play as. We had custom characters in 2 Extreme, and we also had custom characters in WWF Warzone. Those were 2 games that we relentlessly made custom characters in. And I think going through my old memory cards, I know it's been a couple of years since I did this, but there was a video a little while back of going through like 10 plus year old memory cards. I'm sure I still have some of that 2 Extreme PS1 data. Pretty awesome. One thing I do wish, I have a Dex drive. Do you guys know what a Dex drive is? Dex drive was that device they released for the computer, which is like you put a PS1 memory card in it, and then the computer will read it out, and you can turn it into computer data. I wish that my Dex drive would connect to like a modern computer. So the Dex drive used something called a serial cable, which think of if you're not up on your old computer interface ports, think of something that looked a lot more like a Sega Genesis controller port, except a little wider. I don't know the pin count, but I think the Sega Genesis port was something like 9 pins to plug the controller in. So that would make a serial port probably something like 12 or 13 pins. Something like that. Well, that's what the Dex drive uses. So in order to use the Dex drive on my modern computer, I'm gonna have to buy a serial port expansion that I can slip into the motherboard. I've got space for it. I bought a way bigger motherboard than I needed, but that's something I've never done. because this is the only serial port device that I still have. I had a controller years ago, a Gravis gamepad, which plugged into the serial port, but not anymore. Yeah, so that's the old Dex drive. I remember on my old computer, this was probably like in 2006 or something, I hooked up the Dex drive because I still had a serial port, and I went through all my memory cards and I socked them away. I made the digital files, which were very small. I can't remember what the file size was, but I think you could copy an entire PS1 memory card for under a megabyte, right? Because PS2 memory cards were 8 megabytes, and they were supposed to be like, so much space. Oh my gosh, so much space. 8 megabytes, man. So somewhere I've got all of my memory cards from like, gosh, that's 2005, 15 years ago already. Wow, that was sobering. So somewhere I've got save files of my memory cards from 15 years ago, assuming that those did make it onto external hard drive, because in those days, I think I was using dial-up internet still. I was a late adopter of broadband. Oh, excuse me. I was a late adopter of broadband. In those days, I didn't really need it because I was working in manual labor, and entertainment wasn't quite as internet-based as it is now. YouTube was still around. YouTube was around in those days, but it wasn't like it wasn't geared up that you would sit and watch YouTube all night, every night, you know? This is back when you could release a video every week or two and your channel was on fire. And I remember people on the GameFAQs forums talking about the new Angry Nintendo Nerd video. If I could put a timestamp on it, that would be what I would do. So yeah, it's a long time ago. I remember playing a lot of DOS games. I was playing a lot of ZZT in that era. So that's it. I had an amazing time playing 2 Extreme this morning for just a few minutes. I'd like to do stuff like that again in the future. Like the next logical step for me, maybe playing it again with the music fixed. I could do that, I think, without too much trouble. But I think the next logical step is for me to play Cool Borders 3, because Cool Borders 3 was another big-time influential game for me when I was that age. Loved it. Put it away, revisited it as an adult, and the magic wasn't quite there anymore. So I don't know, but yeah, that was great. I think the whole point of all this was driving towards making a Suikoden video again. I wanted to do a review of Suikoden, which is going to involve playing the game, getting some fresh notes, seeing if my opinion's changed. I don't know. Maybe I'll record a giant Let's Play of Suikoden, just me collecting the footage, playing the first few hours of the game. I don't know. It might be a fun extra. We'll see. But yeah, this is on my way to doing old style video game essay videos again. And onwards towards Suikoden. Maybe after Suikoden we'll circle back and we'll do a 2 Extreme video. I don't know. But yeah, it's funny, I only got to play it for like maybe 10 minutes. But it was great. I'm jazzed. And now I'm getting ready to go do my Tuesday at work, and I'm feeling good. I think it went really well. Took a lot of discipline to get all this PS1 stuff sorted out. Because when I first got up, I had to try and settle some of the audio issues that happened last week. Last week on TCR, the video went up on YouTube with no audio. my goodness. Big thanks to Mecha Menace and Alex Swingle for pointing that out in time for me to fix it. So I had to fix that. And then the audio version that I sent to Hemrock was like cut off somehow. So I don't know. I still don't know what I'm going to do about that. Last week's episode had a lot of problems, and I had to spend most of the morning sorting that out. Hence, only 10 minutes for a 2 Extreme. So, but I got it done, man. I only had an hour in the morning, but man, was it a productive hour. How are we doing? 13 minutes in? I think that about does it for this morning. I'm on fire for the PS1. So sometimes I like to talk about what am I looking forward to playing this weekend. Well, right now it's the PS1. Yesterday I was really into Morrowind, and part of me wanted to spend some time setting up the mods for Morrowind again this morning. But yeah, it's all about the PS1 today. Excuse me. I would play Assault Rigs. That was an awesome game. That was a first-person like tank game where you would race around in a tank and you would shoot like enemies, but also had some like puzzle elements to it too. Like just think of back when like the reigning first-person shooters were like Doom and Wolfenstein and stuff. So they made the levels, some of the levels a little bit more maze-like to try and make them, not quite as bad as Wolfenstein. Some of the mazes in Wolfenstein were just ridiculous, but that was one element that they added to an otherwise like glidey first-person shooter type game with awesome funk music. Yeah, Assault Rigs was a great game. I liked it. I would love to play that again in the next couple days. That and maybe just getting the stack of PS1 games out. There were some PS1 games I had on my mind that I never quite made it to. I wanted to get Bushido Blade. You guys know that game? Which, correct me if I'm wrong, not an expensive game. Bushido Blade for the PS1. I don't have access to eBay right now, but I feel like I could get a copy of that to my house for around $10. Yeah, I would love to play Bushido Blade. There was a playable demo that I had of it that was like a training mode with wooden swords. Oh my gosh. Playable demos. Oh. Excuse me. There were a couple of games where I got a hold of playable demos for them, and I ended up playing the playable demos more than the actual game. Or just games where I played the demo over and over and over and over again. Bushido Blade was one of them. There was a Squaresoft demo disc that was circulated around those days that had a playable demo of Bushido Blade. It had a playable demo of Endhinder, the Squaresoft shmup, and then it had a non-playable demo of Final Fantasy Tactics, and I want to say Guys, but I'm not sure. I can't really remember what the fourth game was. But yeah, Squaresoft playable demo disc. Played a lot of training mode in Bushido Blade. 2 Extreme was another one. We had another demo disc that had like a few games in it, and the 2 Extreme demo just had the skateboarding event in it, only skateboarding, and we played that skateboarding demo over and over again. Oh my gosh, it was so hard. Because I think they cranked the difficulty up for the demo. Because I remember getting last place like every time. I don't know if they cranked the difficulty up, or maybe I was just losing because I was really young and didn't really understand how it worked. Oh yeah, another demo that I played a lot of? Blast Chamber. Blast Chamber, I think, was on the same disc that 2 Extreme was, if I remember right. I had a couple of these types of discs, so I could be wrong about that. But that was another one we played quite a lot. The Blast Chamber demo had like 2 maps in it, 2 of the puzzle-oriented maps that you could play. and then it had one multiplayer map. And the thing with the multiplayer map was you couldn't use bots. It was 4-player enabled, so you could hook the multi-tap up, play with all 4 people, but no bots. So we used to play, me and one of my brothers would go at it in Blast Chamber, and then the other 2 people would just be standing there. Because at that time, we didn't have a multi-tap. I mean, we got one later, but at that time, we didn't have a multi-tap, and we didn't have 4 controllers. So it's just me, me and my brother in the Blast Chamber demo, fighting each other, trying to get that crystal and put it in the thingy to make the other guy blow up. Oh my gosh, Blast Chamber was such an awesome game. Oh man, that's another game that I like. Towards the end of me collecting physical goods this past year or 2, Blast Chamber was on my get list, and I never made it happen. But what an awesome game Blast Chamber was. Blast Chamber was one of these games where it's like, we need a clone of Blast Chamber. Blast Chamber should come out on XBLA. Is XBLA still a thing for Xbox? I don't know. I don't play Xbox. Or it should come out on PSN. Please, get it out on one of those systems. Bring Blast Chamber back. Because I feel like that game would do really well now in today's multiplayer-oriented landscape of gaming. Do really well. Oh, man. Man, I just read something the other night that I completely forgot about until just now. And I wanted to wrap this up, but now it seems like I'm going to run until I get to work. All right. So I think this is on Switch. It's either Switch or PS4, but one of the systems that I don't play, is putting out a Kunio-kun collection. River City Ransom. Yeah, the River City Ransom collection. It's called the Kunio-kun collection. That's the Japanese name for the series, and I'm psyched about it. I'm psyched about it because River City Ransom, all-time favorite video game for a long time before it finally gave way to Quake, probably like 5 years ago or so. But still one of my all-time favorites. It's still my number 2 all-time favorite is River City Ransom. Yeah, and it was one game among many, right? Even on the NES. Over in Japan on the Famicom, there was a bunch of these Kunio-kun games. There was a brawler game. There was a hockey game. There was... what else? There was like a historical Japanese sequel. I only know as Downtown... Was that Downtown Niketsu? I don't know. I remember the ROM being circulated in the emulation scene. All these games I've played on the emulation scene, and I've got a couple of them. I've got on the legit Famicom. I've got the dodgeball game. Oh yeah, and there's like that cross country game that came out on Steam a little while back. All this was on the Famicom. So I'd be interested to see what they put on a Kunio-kun collection, because most of those games never made it to English, right? The brawler game, which I know as Ricky Kunio from the emulation scene, was like fan translated to English poorly, but we never saw an official translation. So now that we've got, I guess I want to say that those games have made a bit of a comeback, I guess, because River City Girls was pretty popular, and there was another one, a lesser known one, I think it was called Stay Cool Kobayashi, which is supposed to be, you play as like the boss of the tire factory, and he's his own character and has his own story. Yeah, I feel like those. It's fair to say that River City Ransom has made a comeback over the past several years. Yeah, I would really be interested in seeing that collection. So here's hoping it makes it to Steam. If you have a PS4 or an Xbox or whatever system this thing comes out on, keep your eyes peeled. Or a Switch. I think it's on the Switch. I don't know. I hope it does well, because if it does well, we'll see it jump platforms, and that's how I can get it on PC. So, got the old fingers crossed for that one. That would be amazing. Oh. If only these games came out when I was a little younger and had more time to play games, you know? Alright, how we doing? 23 minutes in. My goodness. Mamma mia, that's a spicy meatball. And now for realsies. No take-backsies. I'm done. I'll see you guys back in the studio. Back again in the studio. You know, I did end up playing more PS1. I've been playing it on my computer, which has been awesome, because I took the time when I built my computer to put in a CD-ROM drive, right? Which kills me because the thing was $20 for this CDR, CD-ROM, CD-writable DVD drive. It's not a Blu-ray drive because those run about $50. But, you know, $20 to have the optical drive. Now, when I was in high school, having a drive that could handle CDRs was big time stuff. This was big time stuff, man. To be able to make burn CDs, you know, and pass them out. I only knew a couple of guys who could do that. Now, that might have been the area that I grew up at, because I wasn't really part of the affluent crowd. Like, I remember MP3s, okay? Prior to 2003, if you went to mp3.com, that was a site that was set up to promote the format. So they had it so that there was all different sort of underground bands and things like that from all over the area, from all over the globe, had set up pages there. And most of them had like 1 or 2 tracks that you could download. So as long as you took the time, you could get, you know, tons and tons of MP3s from little bands that you would have otherwise never heard of. It was like the Bandcamp of the day, right? So we knew this one guy who had one of these CD-ROM drives, and we'd get a bunch of tracks from at his house from mp3.com, right? A site that's now long gone, and we'd pass around CDRs, but it was all music that was licensed to share, so it was pretty awesome. It was a weirdly non-pirating thing that happened, you know, in the dawn of the CDR era, which is usually people think of like printing Dreamcast games and all that stuff. No, this was like music sharing of groups that wanted their music shared. It was very good times. It really felt like a new frontier. So for $20, I got this drive, and now that I have it, I got some emulation set up. And look, I know emulation is like a touchy thing, right? You talk about video games, people don't like it. Hey man, physical games. Well, hey, guess what? You hear that? Hear that? That's the jewel case for my 2 Extreme. Actually, I think this jewel case is broken. I better not do that. But it's cool. I just play the PS1 discs right on the computer. It seems to work pretty well. And I have games that I can't really play any other way. I got a couple of Japanese imports. I don't have any machine that I can play the imports with on the TV. I've got a PS1 Tomb Raider trilogy set that's from Australia that Kaiser gave me many years ago. That's dope. Those are PAL region discs, though, man. They're not going to work on my PlayStation. So yeah, so that's been cool. Played some 2 Extreme, played some Cool Borders 3, played some Suikoden. It's been fun. All right. So we're already an hour in, and here's the deal. I've got a lot to read for the fail bag, and I have another, I've got a whole nother Vancast to go through that was recorded on my birthday. It's a bit of a weird one, but I felt like it's worth a listen. It has some good stuff in it. So this was the morning of my birthday. Now a little background before we dive into the final Vancast. When I woke up to the news that the coronavirus had just reached my state of Maryland, and it reached my state like in my county. So I was a little freaked out, but it was also my birthday, and I was psyched about that because I got some new Euro rack stuff for my birthday, and it was, it's also Friday. It's going to be a good day. It's a little weird. It's a little weird mix of freaked out plus it being my birthday. All right, so let's go there now. You're listening to Tiger Claw Radio. Here's the last Vancast for the week.
Good morning, gamers. It's Friday, 6:20. It's time for the Vancast. Whoa! Have I got an update for you? The coronavirus has surfaced in Maryland. Whoa! 3 cases have been reported in my county last night as of 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock. Woo! Isn't that wacky? That's right. A 70-year-old couple enjoying international travel in the middle of a global pandemic have brought back that little souvenir. So strap in, gamers. Achievement unlocked. It's the coronavirus. Whoa! Morning, everybody. It's the Vancast, 6:20 in the morning. It is 33 degrees outside. 33 degrees is not too bad, but the windshield has frosted over. And I'm on my way to work. Today's my birthday. I turned 36 this morning. March 6th, 1984. That's when I was born. Woke up with a text that, the coronavirus surfaced in my county, in Maryland. So, I got that little birthday gift to worry about. So we're all washing our hands here as much as possible, and just going about our daily lives. There was an email from the schools, from school system representative or something, superintendent, something like that, about the cases that happen here in Maryland, and that the schools are staying open for now, and everybody go about your daily lives. Keep doing whatever you gotta do. And that's really all we can do. Just be as careful as possible. Wash our hands as much as possible. Try and pay attention to the news. If we get any warnings from the CDC, if they change their minds and start telling us to stay home, we gotta know it right away. But apart from that, just do the best we can to stay calm. If you got the coronavirus in your area, do the best you can to stay calm above all else. Don't panic. Whoa, it's the coronavirus. Join the coronavirus subreddit. It's the fastest growing subreddit on Reddit. Whoa. That seems to be the overall theme of the internet right now, is a mixture of total panic and cashing in on the coronavirus memes. It's what's getting clicks right now, man. Is coronavirus clickbait scare videos. That's what it. No, people cannot get enough. They can't get enough. All right, boys and girls, I'm gonna gas up here. Give me 1 second. All right, we have gassed up on this frosty March morning on my birthday here in 2020, on my way to work. It's actually a really nice morning. The sun is just peeking up over the tree line. A couple of clouds in the sky, but not too bad. Really picturesque. It's really nice here, actually. I think Maryland has some beautiful spots, that's for sure. It's a small state. I really don't hear Maryland talked about unless you're talking about like politics or something, because I know we got a lot of politicians who live in southern Maryland, like bleed over from Washington, D.C. Because Washington, D.C. itself is like not nice at all. So the politicians get rich homes in southern Maryland instead. But there's some really beautiful spots here, that's for sure. On my way to work. Right, video games, yes. I completely forgot about video games amidst the... To be honest, I just like making that voice. It has nothing to do with the coronavirus. It's my mock radio man voice. But anyway, So last night I had some game time. Played a little more ZZT with my son. Excellent DOS game. I got to do a video about it. I feel like ZZT is like one of these in games where you have to be one of the chosen ones to really know about it. Hey, do you like DOS games? Oh, sure. Yeah, I like Doom and Wolfenstein. No. Do you like DOS games? Yeah, I like Jill of the Jungle and ZZT and Epic Pinball. Yeah. There you go. Definitely one of the chosen games. Not much else to say about that, though. I played some... I was setting up Morrowind last night. It's funny because I've had a couple of sessions now, not playing the game per se, but just trying to get it set up, you know? So let's talk about the missing mod. Mo Money is the name of the mod that I was looking for. So what Mo Money does is it increases the amount of... we got cops. What do the cops want? Hang on 1 second, boys and girls. They pulled over somebody. Alright. And we're back on the road. Yeah, it looks like somebody got pulled over by an unmarked cop car. It's not a nice unmarked cop car either. Like, I usually think of Chargers, Dodge Chargers. You see a lot of those as unmarked cop cars. But this is like a Ford Focus. It's like a tricked out Ford Focus ready to enact justice on the county. I don't know, man. What was I talking about? Yeah, Morrowind. Mo Money, right. So what Mo Money does is it takes the amount of money that's held by the shopkeepers all throughout the game, and it increases it like tenfold. So one of the things about Morrowind is you can carry back a ton of stuff from raiding a dungeon, and then when you get to the shop, the shopkeeper doesn't have enough money to buy it all. So I wanted to fix that stuff because I didn't want to have to bounce from shopkeeper to shopkeeper. Alright, we're going to sell the armor at the armor guy. We're going to sell the swords at the weapon guy and all that stuff. No. Let's just go to the pawn shop and dump it all. Be done with it. Morrowind's a good game, but it has enough aspects of it that take needless amounts of time. So it's like, let's just make that one little bit go faster. Alright, give me a second here. I'm going to see if I can adjust the fan. Yeah, there we go. Now we're in good shape. So I got Mo Money set up, which is a very simple mod. Nothing really special about that. But here's the thing about Morrowind. If you look up a Let's Play of Morrowind, any like modded Let's Play where they have mods involved, there's always a major graphical overhaul. So I wanted to get some of that stuff, right? I think I picked out like a single graphical change, and then I started going down the rabbit hole of dependencies. I wanted the skies to look better. There's a mod that changes the skies, right? You have like instead of there being a day sky and a night sky, there will be like 2 or 3 day skies and 2 or 3 night skies, and then the same rings true for all the different weather effects. So you could have like a clear night, or you could have a real starry night, you know what I mean? Just to make it so that each evening wasn't necessarily the same. But that mod required like another mod that consisted of 3 letters for its title that I'll never remember. And that was basically like the graphics engine overhaul. So I got that installed, and that really opened up the game. Because one of the big issues with Morrowind, well, I wouldn't say a big issue, but one of the issues, if you compare it to like Oblivion or Skyrim, is the draw distance. Even at max, the draw distance is not great. So I got this graphical overhaul mod on, and it increased the draw distance 5 times over. So it's pretty great. It's not. I don't have it set up so that you can see off into the infinite distance. I don't have it set up. There is still fog, but it's 5 times as far as it used to be, which I think makes it look a lot better, but it's not too much. I see these mods where you can see way off into the distance, and it's like, man, the map wasn't designed that way. It really doesn't look good when you can see that far. You know? It's just my opinion. But that's been fun. I've got, so the skies have been overhauled. The interface has been overhauled. I'd like to do something about the surface of the water. I know there's like a heavy duty mod that affects the way the water looks. So this is pretty cool. Spending some time poking around with Morrowind. Now, I feel as far as like gameplay is concerned, all these changes are pretty minor. Like the Mo Money mod, I think, is really minor. Weightless arrows is pretty minor. I don't have any major like no additional classes, no like additional dungeons or anything like that. When I used to play this, I would add houses. I had a house mod in Balmora, so you would go into this. There was an additional house that was added to the city, and that was just labeled your house. And I don't really know why. There's no real point in having anything like that, I don't think. Maybe in Skyrim, but not in Morrowind. In Morrowind, you can just set up shop anywhere, so I would typically pick a bed in like the Mages Guild or something, and I would just put my things down there, and that worked just fine. So I never really felt the need for like a quote-unquote house. But that's it. Morrowind has been a good time. So this morning when I got up, oh yeah, there was something I was getting at there. My son walked in last night, and I was playing Morrowind. I had a test save open playing Morrowind. He was like, "Oh yeah, you playing that game again? You told me about?" I was like, "Yeah." And what did he say? He didn't buy it. He wasn't into the game. He was like, "I like the concept of it, but it just doesn't look great. I need something that looks a little better." But he made a good point. He was like, it has to look a lot better or a lot worse, was the point he made. He's like, if it looked terrible, I could get on board with using my imagination. But it looks very middle of the road to him, which I don't know. Maybe that's fair. This is a 10-year-old kid looking at Morrowind and trying to formulate an opinion based on what he sees. So he's coming from a completely different world, you know. All right, give me a second here. I'm out here on the highway. When I'm driving to work and I take the front way, which is pretty rare, I usually jump off of the Vancast before I get to the highway. Not this time. Now I'm leaving the local lanes now, and I'm getting immersed onto the highway as we speak. Here comes the insertion, and I've made it. I have my spot in the highway. I noticed the roads are not as busy this morning as they typically are. Driving on the highway for me is normally a nerve-wracking thing, because we got one major artery that goes downtown. And it's always packed, dangerously so. One of the things that I say all the time, it's like my dad, it's not really a joke, but it's like my dad line, I guess, is that people die every day and it doesn't even make the paper. Which doesn't really make sense anymore because nobody reads the paper. But that's the case out here on the highway. There'll be fatal crashes out here, and there won't be any news coverage of it. It's like, well, some dope died out on the highway. What are you going to do? A million other dopes lined up behind him. No great loss there. So I feel that sentiment should inspire a little bit of self-preservation. You know what I mean? You got to be careful with your life because you're the only one. Well, that's not fair. Yeah, I was going to say, you're the only one it matters to. You and your family and your friends. But all the rest of these dopes out here on the highway, my car could flip over in flames right now. And they'd be, oh boy, let's swerve around that accident so I don't have to stop on the way to work. You know what I mean? Be defensive. Alright, give me a second. I gotta merge left. And we have done it, ladies and gentlemen. Alright. So we covered the coronavirus making its appearance in Maryland. We covered Morrowind and its mods. And I think that's about it. It's Friday, boys and girls. I'm going to go do my Friday at the office and then come home, celebrate my birthday with my family. I'm looking forward to pizza and Chinese food tonight on the same table because that's what I wanted. I'll see you guys back in the studio.
All right, boys and girls. There's no time. We got to get right to the fail bag. There is no time. All right, first of all, last week we had some issues with the sound. I had a lot of issues last week, actually. I produced a copy of the show for Hemrock. It's like a supporter edition, and it was cut off, and then I put it up on YouTube, and there was no audio. Last week was a mess. It was technically speaking, is the worst we've done in a while. So thank you for sticking with us. I'm hoping this week's better. A nice jumbo episode will make up for it, right? Right? Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. All right, so we got some comments here. Got one from Alex Swingle. Just quoting me on the Too Extreme video. Oh, this is awful. Out of context, CF. Yes, that's right. I did say that. I had some time. Too Extreme's a tough game, man. Really brings it out of you. What's on my shelf? Good old Mecha Menace. On last week's episode, he writes, your own Oscar-ed band played you off at the end. Couldn't hear a word. Yep, yet another thing I did wrong last week. I was exhausted, and I botched it on a few different places, so sorry about that. I love the PC speaker soundtracks of my youth. Even later, when I discovered the MIDI tracks, I enjoyed them, but they just didn't sound right. It sounded too fancy for the visuals. Yeah, I agree. It was weird playing some games later with, like, Sound Blaster stuff. Like the original Duke Nukem, okay, the side-scrolling game. I'm not talking about Duke Nukem 2 so much, but the original Duke Nukem and Commander Keen is another awesome example. Commander Keen was a game I played with PC speaker sound. That's how I played it back in the day when it was still like new and fresh. It's weird to play it with Sound Blaster stuff. Thanks for the comment. Glad you're still listening. Hope your life is good. Saga says, get some air! Too Extreme video. Yes, get some air indeed. Ruby Royd on the Patreon exclusive Too Extreme expansion video when I did all 4 events. He says, hey, thanks for the video. I've only played 3 Extreme in my childhood, but this one looks fun as well. I'm curious how that came about. How did it come to pass that you played 3 Extreme but not 2 Extreme? Well, here, let me lay some context to why. I guess maybe it's just because it was reversed for me. Because I remember 2 Extreme was like a game everybody knew, right? At least in my neighborhood, I remember reading about it in magazines. And then when 3 Extreme was coming out, it had like I want to say GamePro. That was the name of the magazine. GamePro had a feature on it, and they bashed it. They didn't like it. But I was like, I don't care, man. 2 Extreme was so awesome. I'm going to play 3 Extreme because numerically, that is 1 more extreme than 2 Extreme. So I got 3 Extreme, being a huge fan of 2 Extreme, not realizing that 2 Extreme was a sequel to some other game. Yeah, so that's... And once it came out, and once I got it, I never saw it really talked about in media again. It wasn't a bad game. It's just... They wanted to make this jump from like the sprite use to full 3D, right? Because if you go back and look at that video that I posted, the people, some of the objects, all the gates, those are all sprite work. But if you look in 3 Extreme, the people are actually rendered in 3D. They don't look great. They look kind of like Gorilla-ish, but it was, technically they were like, yeah, we're doing away with the sprites or replacing it with 3D. So, I don't know. What I remember the most about 3 Extreme was the music video. You know the music video that you can get into from like the title screen? And it was like a hardcore band or something. I can't even remember the name of the band, but I do remember looking them up, and this will date this for you. I looked them up on Napster and got some of their other tracks off of Napster, and it turned out they were like a hardcore thrash band, like more so than they are on that one song on the 3 Extreme disc. Yeah, I haven't played 3 Extreme in a long time. I don't have it anymore. I used to have it when I was very young. But as I've told many times on the air, my PS1 collection was purged when I was about 22 or 23 or so. Must have been 23. I was still working in construction. I was working as a plumber, and I had to get rid of all my PS1 games for grocery money. I saved a few of them because the guy I sold them to didn't like RPGs at all, so I was able to save like all my RPGs and stuff, but a lot of the rest of the games, mostly stuff you could buy again. There were only a couple of things in it that were really valuable, but no high-dollar games, right? The most valuable thing I can think of was I had the long box Resident Evil, which I think is probably like $50 now. I mean, yeah, that's some money, but it's not like, we're not talking out of this world. If I really wanted to buy that, I could buy it. But anyway. I'm rambling. That's what happened to my copy of 3 Extreme. Eric Controller. Back in the day, I was playing such games as Midtown Madness 1 and 2. Good for you, man. I wanted to play Midtown Madness. I never made it. I remember hearing I know I'm getting stuck on the first sentence in your comment, but I remember people talking about Midtown Madness and it being like open world racing and really wanting that because I liked the Need for Speed games. And one of the things I liked about Need for Speed, especially Need for Speed 2, Hot Pursuit, that was the one I had on PC, right? I can't remember if it was 2 or 3. But I had the PS1 game, Hot Pursuit. I know they released another game later with that same title, but the PS1 game, I had the PC release of that. And it had like alternate paths you could take, right? So it wasn't, it was still a linear race, but there was a little bit of like shortcutting in there. And I thought that was really cool. So the idea of like a fully like open racing game was like, yeah, that's what I want. Never quite made it. All right, let's give this another shot. We're going to try and read this comment one more time. Back in the day, I was playing such games as Midtown Madness 1 and 2, Doom, 3D Movie Maker. Yes, played some 3D Movie Maker. Descent 1 and 2, Montezuma's Return, and Star Trek Academy, to name a few. Unfortunately, Quake didn't grace my computer screen until much later than I bought it on Steam. I have, of course, always known about the importance in shaking up the game industry and its lasting legacy. Seeing as I was, and still am, someone who enjoys 9 Inch Nails, I am, to this day, kicking myself for not finding a way to get this game when I was younger. You did, however, touch on a really big part of my gaming youth, and that was Half-Life and the modding community. Besides playing Half-Life and its expansions, many times, might I add, I played such mods as They Hunger. Yes, I played They Hunger as well. Point of View, Azure Sheep, Chemical Existence, Poke646, and Sven Co-op. When I discovered modding for PC games, it was over. I was a PC gamer at heart from then on. Yes, I'm raising my hot tea to you, Eric. Oh, yeah. You hit a few things. First of all, let's talk about Half-Life, all right? Clearly, I thought I was huge into Half-Life. I don't know about all these mods, so I think you dug deeper than me, okay? Azure Sheep, Chemical Existence, Poke646. I gotta Google Poke646, because I don't know that one. I do know They Hunger, because They Hunger had a feature in PC Gamer at the time. And I remember being at my friend Matt's house, and he was like, yeah, I want to play this. And I was like, okay. Looked it up, got it, and I played it, and it was great. And I remember I didn't have a lot of money in those days. So I was able to get a computer game. Computer games were all I was buying. And I was able to get one like every 2 or 3 weeks, maybe once a month or something. I remember Half-Life was $30 because that's what it cost for the box that came with Half-Life, and it came with Opposing Forces hadn't come out yet, so that was not in there. It was just Half-Life. It was the Half-Life version of Team Fortress, what we now call Team Fortress Classic, on Steam. And what was the third thing that was in there? What was the third thing? It wasn't Counter-Strike, because Counter-Strike wasn't available commercially yet. Man, what was the third thing? It was Team Fortress. It was Half-Life. Maybe it was Deathmatch Classic. Maybe that's what it was. Or maybe there wasn't a third thing. Maybe it was just those two things. I don't know. But I bought that for $30. And this was even before Blue Shield. This is before Opposing Forces. And I remember thinking, this is the game to buy. Because you get Half-Life, and then you get the door to this whole nother world where you can download mods. That there was nothing like that on console anywhere. And there were... If a console had done it, I'd have been all in, right? I know in Japan on the Famicom they had the disc system, right, which kind of came close. There was some game swapping going around. You could like save games from your Excite Bike onto disc and things like that. So there was it came close, but nothing else in America came close. My goodness. Yeah. Half-Life sticks out. It wasn't the first game I ever got mods for, but that was like one of the big ones that opened my eyes to like, you're not just downloading like a couple extra stages, none of that stuff. This is a whole new world. That was how I experienced Counter-Strike for the first time. There was no commercial Counter-Strike. There was no Steam yet. Counter-Strike was a mod. So as far as I knew, in my eyes, there could have been, there's thousands of Counter-Strikes out there. Counter-Strike is just one free mod out of all the free mods that are available. And I remember Half-Life giving me this feeling that no other game gave me, that of the vastness of the ocean of creativity that was out there. That was out there and 100% not monetized at all. I'll put it to you this way, Eric. I remember seeing Counter-Strike on the shelves of the game store for the first time, right? They gave it its own box, and I saw that on the shelf at GameStop, and I was pissed off, man. I was pissed off. This was a free game. Why are they selling it? Why? Who would buy this? Just go download it. It's free. Why is it all of a sudden not free? What did you guys do? I wasn't happy that Counter-Strike was for sale on the shelves. I was pissed off. Ultimately, it was a good thing, I guess, because they were able to make it, maintain it, right? It's still around because of the way it was cared for. And part of that was becoming commercial software, unfortunately. But yeah, I don't know. I guess this is a bit of a tangent, but yeah, I'm right there with you with the modability of Half-Life being a huge point. Also, I love it that you mentioned 3D Movie Maker, because I had that as well. It's funny. I had this really old beat up laptop that I got off of eBay. This is like when my wife and I first got together. And I remember in our first place was this little one-room place. One-room subletting in the back of a house in like a dangerous part of town. And I remember, and I was working as a waiter at the time. And I didn't have a car. So I would wake up and I would walk to the restaurant where I worked, which was like, I don't know, like a 10-minute walk. And I remember clearly sitting up at night in our bed, because the whole place was basically just the bed, messing with 3D Movie Maker. This is not as a kid, mind you. This is a grown man. Just because I didn't have anything else to play. Yeah, 3D Movie Maker was fun. That's fun times. I'd love to get a virtual machine of Windows 95 so that we could have some fun doing videos of 3D Movie Maker and good old Pinball Builder. Awesome, awesome comment, Eric. Hope your life is good, brother. Thanks for checking in. Death Adder, my man. He says he leaves a timestamp that just says LOL on the Too Extreme video. It's a timestamp watching me slam into a bunch of barrels or something. He says, I do remember that demo disc with the skateboarding version of this. I vividly remember going through those rectangle things. Yeah, man. Yeah, I might have played... I played that demo a lot. I almost said I played it more than the actual game. I don't think that's true. But anyway, yeah, you're right. That was an awesome demo disc. Hemrock. This is also on the PS1. Everybody with comments are all on the PS1 video this week. Not so much on last week's actual episode. Too many technical issues. Hemrock writes, wow, this really takes me back. This was one of the first games my brother and I rented for the PS1, from Blockbuster, of course. I really dug Too Extreme at the time. You should keep up these improvisational PS1 Let's Plays going. I read that wrong. You should keep these improvisational PS1 Let's Plays going. Thank you. I forgot how often the CPU-controlled players would crash. And then he has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 timestamps of the CPU players crashing. Yeah, they did, but they were mega fast. Those CPU players are fast. It's tough, man. And it's a lot of that is momentum, held momentum. So you'll be going as fast as you can go, and they'll just blow past you just because they have more momentum that they acquired a minute and a half previously. It's frustrating, man. It is. So that's it for the YouTube comments. We got a big long email from my good buddy Hemrock that we're gonna read, and that's the show. So stick with me 1 second here. All right, I got a little distracted, but we're ready to do this. Hemrock writes, hey, Paisano, I enjoyed the last episode. You had some great van casting. Thanks, man. You mentioned the Civ 2 scenario. I actually have an updated version of that scenario I can send you if you'd like. Yes, man. Yes, I would. Thank you. I did write you an email for last week. No worries about missing it. If you'd like to take a look, I've included that at the bottom of this letter. Thank you so much. My goodness. Appreciate it. It's got some interesting stuff about floppy disks at MagFest, as well as the mention of Suikoden. Yeah, man. Yeah, man. Quick break from the email. We're going to distribute a floppy disk at MagFest. We're going to create and distribute our own MS-DOS. I don't know if it's going to be relegated to MS-DOS or not, but our own user-generated content on a floppy disk. So how much fun can you pack into a floppy disk? We got a year to find out. Back to the email. Strangely, I didn't know when writing that email how much you were going to talk about Suikoden in the episode last week. Speaking of Suikoden, you said it was the last great 2D RPG. If you're interested in a late 2D RPGs of the PS1 era, you should try the Arc the Lad series. Both Arc the Lad 1 and 2 were fun 2D RPGs in the PS1 and are pretty popular in Japan. Fortunately, we actually did receive these games in the West, but they did not come out until 2002, when many people were beginning to move from the PS1 to the PS2, so I think they got overlooked. I actually did an extensive video review on this game. I think it was about 20 minutes long. I wanted to review the entire series and use it as a gateway return to YouTube, but it never came to fruition, and I only completed one video with some screen recording of the second game. Maybe I could dig up the video and you could post it on your channel as sort of a Lost Archives review. Just a thought if you're interested in that sort of thing. All right, let me take a quick break. Yes, yes, and yes. Send it. I will post it tonight. Your videos were really good. They were really good, man. I bought Cycross for the Famicom because of you, and that's a good game. That is a good game. I understand why you didn't get big into YouTube. I understand it, but I'm just saying the talent was there. You could have been one of the great channels. All right. But let's get back to the email. To answer your question about Suikoden's game case, yes, it was a single CD game, but the case was thick and it appeared to have multiple CDs in it. That was cool that the guy at the now defunct pawn shop recognized you. I really enjoy old stories of game hunting. Keep those coming. Yeah, man, no problem. I got an email In an email from Eric Controller, he mentioned how his first PC was a compact from his father's old office after they upgraded. I think it must be a small world because that's how I got my first PC, which also was a compact. My dad had upgraded, and he gave me his old PC. It was a compact, and I think it was from the Presario series. It was black with a small form factor that you could typically see in an office setting. It had a 3.5-inch floppy drive and a CD-ROM drive. You started with a CD-ROM drive. Good for you, man. And it was he gave it to me circa 1999, and I believe the PC ran Windows 98 or 95. I've included a picture I found on the net that looks similar. I'm kicking myself for not saving that old thing. I don't know what happened to it. My parents moved from that house in 2003, and I never remember seeing it after that. A few years back, I went to my parents' place and tried to see if I could find that PC buried somewhere in the garage or office storage, but alas, it has disappeared. It would have been a joy to see what kind of games and old files were on it. I remember playing Civ 2 and Colonization on it. I know you write reviews for Emerald Rangers. Have you thought about turning those into YouTube videos? It seems like you've already done much of the work by writing the script. Now all you have to do is read it, record it, and throw it together with some kind of footage, which seems easy enough to obtain since you already have to play the game. Just a thought. Anyways, hope you're doing well. I'm rooting for you. Hemrock. And he's got his next email here from last week that I missed that I'm going to read in a bit. But there's a couple things I want to go over here. Let's talk about the compact. That sounds like an awesome PC to start with. The PC we started with in my house was from a generation prior. So you're talking about Windows 95, Windows 98. Yeah, that's really cool. And what's funny is your story about getting it from an old office building and Eric having gotten his PC the same. I've heard that story from others as well. Not people I knew, but I've heard, listening to podcasts and stuff, I think that might be like a pretty common thing, a common occurrence that happened back in the day. Because I don't like nowadays, I think, at least, I'm pretty sure machines like that now get trashed, right? I don't think they get given out. But I've heard of this. Big companies with tons of computers, they don't know what to do with them, so some of the employees take them home. This has got to be a thing that's more than just you two. All right. Oh. All right, Emerald Rangers. So we can let's talk about Emerald Rangers for a bit. We can thank Emerald Rangers for my return to video game essays. Yes, that is why I'm doing it again, but the stuff I write for Emerald Rangers belongs to Emerald Rangers. So I wouldn't turn it into a video unless it was a video for that website, and that website is interested in doing written only content at the moment. So hang on. Excuse me. So it's because of the writing I've been doing there that I've kind of come back to writing as a whole, and that has kind of warmed me up to doing the old essay type video again. But that stuff belongs to them. That's work I do for Sendu and his project because he's a friend and I want to be a part of his thing. So those are for him. The idea at the start of that was that I was going to be able to like do their review codes, but I was out for so long. I've been reviewing my own stuff to try and get back into it. Like I did. What was the last one that I did? The first person dungeon crawler. I can't even think of what it's called now. Operation Abyss. That was just a game that I had, that I played, that I kind of liked. Yeah. So I don't know. Oh, yeah, and Fatal Labyrinth I did, too, for them. Fatal Labyrinth was a game that Sendu actually bought me. He was like, hey, man, I'll get this for you. You said you wanted it. Just do some kind of review. And he bought it for me, and I never did the review. So I ended up doing a written one for his website, like, almost 10 years later. Because I'm a terrible person inside. But that doesn't matter. I can do other stuff. I can write my reviews for Emerald Rangers, and I can write separate reviews to turn into videos. So I have a rewrite of the Suikoden script underway, and I have the original Suikoden script that I wrote years and years ago. I still have that. That did survive. I've got it here. I actually was looking at it a couple days ago. Yeah, so that's a thing. That's a thing. Let's see what else we got. Did I touch on everything on that email? I think I did. It sounds like it. Oh, yeah. You wanted more stories about game hunting. I'd have to think, but my favorite, like my real game hunting stories, really centered around that pawn shop. There was a pawn shop that I talked about last week. It was like the Trade Center, and then just around the block was another like place called the Game Exchange. It was not the Game Exchange, the Toy Exchange. That was it. So the Toy Exchange was like it wasn't a pawn shop per se, but it was like a pawn shop for toys, only toys. A lot of vintage, stuff, and not just vintage toys, but toys that were considered vintage in like 1995. So you'd see like 1970s, comic book stuff. And then around the block from that was a comic book store called the Barbarian that had, oh my goodness, I'll tell you about the Barbarian books, circa 1995, all right? Amazon wasn't around yet. It was, I guess, but it wasn't, we didn't quite settle into this reality where if you wanted some sort of geek culture, you had to buy it. You could just buy it offline. You had to go to one of these stops, one of these stores, like geek-type stores. So this comic book store had everything, man. It had everything. There was like Star Wars stuff hanging from the ceiling, wall-to-wall, Dungeons and Dragons, anime, lots of comic books, superheroes, crazy like adults-only comic books. It was really bizarre. We used to play a game called Car Wars, Steve Jackson's Car Wars, and we would see GURPS and stuff there. It was amazing. It was crazy. It's crazy. They had to move from that spot, and they're not. They when Amazon and eBay kind of took over, they became a shadow of their former self. But at that time, you had that plus the pawn shops all like within like a block or two. So you'd go to those two places, and then there was like an old hamburger store that was in the same block. And you could go down there for like a couple of bucks, right? The comic book store regularly had old VHS tapes for like $2. So you could get $5 for allowance if you were lucky. You could go down, take $2, and get Dominion Tank Police on cassette, and then you could head over to the hamburger shop and get some sliders, 2 or 3 of these tiny hamburgers, and then you could ride your bicycle home, and there you go. Or you could take your $5 over to the pawn shop, get yourself a Nintendo game, throw it in your backpack, and head home, which is what I usually did. I didn't mess around with the comic book store too much. I remember buying comics a few times, but for the most part, for me, I wanted those Nintendo games. That's what I wanted. I think my one memory that sticks out to me the most is knowing how far those places were. I went all the way down there just to buy a Nintendo game, and I bought a game called Taboo: The Sixth Sense, which was this weird game that tells your fortune, and it isn't a video game. And I brought it home with my friends, and we put it in, and I was like, what on earth is this garbage? And the entire time I lived at home and maintained this collection, that was the only time I took a game, brought it back to the pawn shop, and was like, here, take this back. Take it back for like $1. I'll spend that on another game. Taboo: The Sixth Sense. Look it up. Take a look on YouTube and see what it is. I couldn't make heads or tails of it. I didn't know what was going on. What, are you reading tarot cards or something? I don't want to do that. I want to go on an adventure. It's Nintendo, man. Come on. I don't get it. I still don't get it. I still look at that game as an adult, and I'm like, what on who greenlit this project? Come on now. All right. I love those places, man. It kind of, when I think about it, to be honest, it breaks my heart a little that all those places are gone now. Because you can go down, that whole town square is still around. Even the hamburger store's gone. It's bonkers. It's all gone because it's all on the internet now. If you wanted, you could get all that stuff. That's like 15 minutes on eBay clicking around. Now, granted, it's like 100 times more money. That same Dominion Tank Police tape is going to cost. Let's see how much a Dominion Tank Police VHS tape is on eBay. I bet it's a lot. Can you even get something like that? Dominion Tank Police VHS. Oh, snap. It's not a lot. Dominion Tank Police Part 1, 1994. $9.99 plus $2 shipping. Version 2, $2.99 with 3. It's not a lot of money. I kind of want to get a VHS player now. That's awesome. That is awesome. Good old Annapuma. I'm not an anime guy, but I remember Dominion Tank Police fondly. All right. Let's get back to the email. How we doing? How we doing? I'm blowing it. Look, I'm blowing it wide open. It's 10:14. This is supposed to be done by now, and we're an hour and 45. All right. He writes, "Greetings, Critical Failure. Thanks as usual for another great episode. Sorry that you were sick last week. I hope you're feeling better." I am, man. Thanks so much. Sometimes you get sick. It's great to hear that you're introducing your son to DOS games and that he's really enjoying Pinball Construction Set. How did he like arcade volleyball? It's a shame the computer-controlled player is brutally difficult. Have you shown him Jetpack and the accompanying level editor? All right, quick break. Actually, I have not yet shown him arcade volleyball. I have not yet shown him Jetpack, and the reason why is because he is head over heels in love with ZZT. That's what he wants to play, and I don't want to break it up. Enjoy ZZT, man. We're going to enjoy ZZT for a couple of weeks. If you're still into it, then we'll move on to something else. It's completely eclipsed the other games. Because prior to him getting into ZZT, he was playing Pinball Construction Set and a little bit of Bard's Tale. He wasn't really playing Bard's Tale, but the few times where he would like sit and watch me play games, I would play Bard's Tale, the original MS-DOS Bard's Tale, and he would dig it, and he would check it out. Like, I would play it, and I would have paper notes, and he would kind of see the paper notes and how they correlated to what was on the screen, and it sort of made sense on that level. All of that is gone when ZZT came around. So when he starts to get tired of ZZT, then we'll move into Jetpack, and I have arcade volleyball waiting in the wings. I've got to dig up arcade volleyball again, to be honest. I know it's freeware. I know it's out there, but I don't have it in my MS-DOS implementation. Jetpack I do. But we'll see. All right, back to the email. It goes, yes to video essays. Bring back the Suikoden review. Yeah, man. I got to play the game again. I kind of want to do like a supporters only long play of Suikoden, and that's how I'll get the footage. But we'll see. Let's go. Yeah, let's read on. I got the idea for the website from the 2021 MagFest floppy. Oh, geez. Let me back this up a bit. The idea of a website for the 2021 MagFest floppy is an amazing one. I think it could really take off and become a tradition. It really has the potential to build a community. Yeah, you do. It does. I think we got a winner idea on our hands. Like you said, the website's got to look old. I vote for a GeoCities / Angel Fire style. I think it is, which I think was a form of static HTML. I don't know. You tell me. This topic reminds me of an old podcast that I've mentioned before, the Nintendo Retrocast. These were the guys that got me back into the old console games during the 2000s. For a time, they had a recurring segment on their show called GeoCities Site of the Week. It was a bit of a comedic production where they would look up video game-centric old websites from the beloved GeoCities. Obviously, this was before they shut all those websites down, and the two hosts of the podcast would score the site based on a certain criteria. It was actually pretty funny. The point system was a bit like this. 1 point for having a guest book, 1 point for being in a web ring, 1 point for each animated GIF on the main page, 1 point for having part of their site under construction, 1 point for a visitor counter, and an additional point if the counter was broken. It was great fun. But in any case, I think the MagFest floppy website should aspire to this form of greatness. It definitely needs a guest book, and the floppies released in 2021 should include a link to the website in the README. Yes, it should. I also think took a look at purchasing some floppies in bulk. It's not too expensive as long as you buy used floppies. However, as someone who's purchased used floppy disks from the eBay store, if you're probably looking at about 10 to 20% failure rate, so take that into consideration. I'm willing to help out. I have a floppy drive. I wonder if any listeners, and I'm looking at you, Desmond, have made NSF formatted tunes that could be included in the MagFest disc. I'm sure this is something that can be sorted out on the website. Maybe I'm going overboard, but about what MagFest floppy merch. We could get some t-shirts going or enamel pins, who knows. Maybe in 10 years they'll become collector's items. All right. That was a huge paragraph. Let's go over it. So you asked me about static HTML and GeoCities Angelfire. Okay, so static HTML, think of it just like anything that's not dynamic HTML, all right? Let's go back in time. So one of the things that made GeoCities popular was that you had a tool that felt a lot like MS Word or something like that, or maybe like PowerPoint. You could drag things around in something that looked like PowerPoint, and it would produce a single HTML file that would not change based on anything else, right? So, for example, there wasn't like an update button where you could type in a new update and it would make it on the news. You know how like a blogger page now is very much not static HTML. All right, there's update buttons. You can get in and leave your mark on your website and put in new content without ever changing the layout. That's not the way it was back in the day. So GeoCities was popular because you could do it without knowing any code. Now, if there were some smart kids who learned HTML so they could, by hand, they could code this stuff. But again, what they would code was a single sheet of code that would have all their content written into it, and that wouldn't change. And they would have, maybe they'd have like 2 or 3 pages within their website, and then each one of those pages would have a static HTML page, and they'd link them together. Just HTML that's not dynamic. That's all that means. All right. Probably the best way to make an authentic page that looks old is to code it by hand, and it is not hard at all. HTML is like the easiest. At this point, I even shy away from calling it a programming language because it's not really like a programming language per se. But HTML is easy, my man. All right, this was before anyone was really using cascading style sheets, right? What they do? How do I explain cascading style sheets? All right, think of it like this. Okay, cascading style sheets is like you're writing all your content in what they call div tags, div. And then each div tag has a label, and then you got a separate sheet of code that defines how those labels look. So if you're to visualize it in your head, imagine writing all the content on yellow Post-it notes, right? You have your update on the yellow Post-it note. You've got your title and your description of what you do on the yellow Post-it note. You've got a little About Me column on a yellow Post-it note. Now, you can arrange those yellow Post-it notes on a bulletin board any way you want. You can move them all around. You can put the About Me up at top. You can put your content in the middle, and below that you got to download for the disk. Those are all separate things. Cascading style sheets is a separate form of code that's going to define where those Post-it notes are aligned, what colors they are, what colors the text is, how big or small the text is. It's all separate. And the reason it's done that way is because you can change the way a website looks drastically without ever touching the static code. You just have to mess with that style sheet. And the advantage is, if you want to go add stuff, right? If you have a site that's already in place and the style sheets are already set up, you don't have to dress up when you can just put your comment in. All right, this div tag is going to be set up with the body content style sheet tag, and then the way it's supposed to look is already written, and it'll just show up right. I think it was called CSS Zen Garden was the best way to take a look at what cascading style sheets is. CSS. It was just like a page with some random text on it, and then anybody could develop a cascading style sheet for it, and you could click around and make the page look completely differently based on the CSS thing. So GeoCities and all this stuff was before any of that. Nobody in high school knew how to do CSS. I don't even know if it was around yet. So we're just talking about HTML tag, close HTML tag, and then inside of that we got body tag, closed body tag. And then inside of that, we got open paragraph, and then we got closed paragraph. And then inside of that, we got open table, and we got closed table. And then inside of that, we got table row, and then closed table row. And then inside of that, we got table data and closed table data. And then inside of that, we got download the disk. And then inside of that, we got an anchor tag and a closed anchor tag. And then href. And then inside the href argument, we'd have a link that would go to, I don't know, wherever. All right? Sounds like a mouthful. Very easy. Okay. And I think that's because that's what high school kids were doing when they were learning, quote unquote, to code. So I think that would probably be the most authentic thing to do. And if you ever wanted to give it a shot, you guys out there who have never done it, you can download Notepad++. That's a nice way to do it. And then Notepad++ has a feature. It's just like it's almost exactly like good old-fashioned Windows Notepad, but it has a little feature where you can activate color tags, so that when you open your paragraph tag, it will look for the closing paragraph tag, and then inside your paragraph you can tell what's there. All right, I'm rambling about HTML, but that's definitely the way to go. Definitely the way to go. There's oh, yes, you talked about merch. Here's what you do with merch. You do, think of it like we were a garage band. That's how you do merch. We would make stickers, maybe not T-shirts, because T-shirts is an expensive venture unless you're doing like pay-to-print T-shirts, which usually end up being expensive for the end user. Nobody's going to pay $30 for a MagFest floppy disk T-shirt. Also, I think we'd get in trouble if we had like MagFest in the title of our merch. But you could do stickers. You could do like $25 for a big print run of stickers or patches or something like that. Those are very easy to do. Or little buttons, right? I got a lot of painted blonde buttons. The guy who makes cassette tapes that I buy, because he has a button press and he just makes the buttons, right? There's things you can do for not a lot of money to do merch. Awesome stuff. But we're going to get back to that at a later date. I would like to put together a dummy website in static HTML that you could see, so that you can be like, all right, that's the feel. But we'll get back to that. Let's finish up with this email so we can get some sleep. He goes on. With all this talk about DOS games, I took some time to play Pinball Construction Set, or PCS as the cool kids are calling it. It's pretty fun, although as you know, it's not perfect. You're right about that. Sometimes it feels like the controls aren't that responsive. I wish it controlled more like Rollerball for the NES. You and me both. Quick side note, I have thought about trying to replicate at least part of that board in PCS. I was running it on my Windows XP computer, and my PC threw a conniption fit when I started pressing Shift multiple times. I got the sticky keys warning, so I had to go into my PC settings, turn all that garbage off. But once I finally figured out what I was doing in PCS, and I got the CPU cycles set appropriately, it was actually rather entertaining. What CPU speed do you run with it? I found that 254 cycles works well. Additionally, I set up my Joy-to-Key program to work for Jetpack, which greatly enhances the gameplay. A couple of questions here. When I'm playing, I use 350 CPU cycles. That's when I'm actually playing pinball. When I'm creating the set, I usually go with about 500 cycles for construction. And then I go back and forth between the two. But he goes on. By the way, Jetpack 2 does exist. You can see it here. That sounds awesome. We'll go ahead and open that up in a new tab. Have you listened to any of the Retronauts episodes? How about the C64 episode? Yes, I have. Since you wrote this email, I have, but not the C64 one. I was listening to the Y2K episode just a couple days ago, and I gotta say, I really enjoyed it. They were people that must be around my age, that really maybe even a little older, who remember what was going on, during the Y2K phenomenon. They were talking about like when New Year's happened, New Year's Eve, January 1st, 2000, where they were, and they were, I starting my new job or whatever. At the time, I was still in high school. Now, I only did a year and a half of high school, and then I dropped out. Went and got my diploma later in life. But I was still in high school, I was really into playing guitar, and that's where I was. I remember my older brother came over to my mom's house. He brought a shotgun, and he had a shotgun and a camcorder, and he pointed the camcorder at the TV when we saw the ball drop, and he was holding his shotgun. He was expecting the power to go out, and he wanted to catch it all on tape. Power didn't go out, and then that was the end of it. And we had a nice little party, and he went home. Okay, he says, I found out your discussion about the ZZT community interesting. What made it so toxic? You were also wondering about the size of Mega Zeus games, and I think on average they're bigger than the typical ZZT game. Most Mega Zeus games are 2 megabytes or more, although there are smaller ones that could potentially fit on floppy disks with rooms to spare. What was the name of the application that can slow programs down? I think it was called something like Slow-Mo. I think this would be great to use to get the original MTG PC game to run properly. I always find it running too fast. Keep rolling retro, Hemrock. R.I.P. Raspberry Pi. All right, a couple of things here. Let's start at the end and work backwards. The program was called Moslo, M-O-S-L-O, and it really only worked for very, very old MS-DOS games. 1980s MS-DOS games you would load from a command prompt. I question whether it would work well for MTG, the old MTG game, which I had, by the way, big box. But anyway, I think you're probably better off doing what I'm doing right now, which is trying to set up a virtual machine and running that game from a virtual machine. That's probably your best bet. If you're willing to go through all the trouble of setting up a batch script of Moslo to run, you're better off just doing a virtual machine. I know your computer can handle it. Come on now. Come on, man. You can do a virtual machine. We can Google it enough to figure out how it works and make it happen. But the program is called Moslo. It's a very small program, small enough that we could have potentially included it in our little disk if we needed to. Mega Zeus games are pretty big, yeah, prohibitively big. And then we talked about the Retronauts, which I'm brand new to. And we got, what else we got here? We have a couple of things. He included a couple of images. We got a compact, this old busted down. Yeah, it's the slim line, the very slim. What's the word? There's a special word for it. Low profile parts. I wanted to build a computer like this, thin, but any low profile parts, then the price goes through the roof. And what's the other one? Windows XP motivational poster. Let's pop this open. Windows is shutting down. This is the moment that reminds me of what I forgot to do. Yeah, I remember that feeling. I still feel that way sometimes whenever I take the time to shut down my computer. All right. Let's see if we can do this now. Give me a second here. Let's get this up and running. Come on now. Hey, there we go. Yeah. You know that song. Just let it play for a minute. It's so funny. I think I've only actually played Maniac Mansion like maybe once since I started this podcast. But the music from Maniac Mansion, my goodness, is it ever timeless? And that is Dave's theme. Oh yeah. Don't be a tuna head. Let's go rescue Sandy. But that's not what that song means. For us, that means it's time to wrap it up. 2 hours and 5 minutes in. My goodness. Why on earth did I make it 2 hours and 5 minutes in? But thanks for sticking with us and hanging out and talking some video games and listening to some chiptunes and reading some comments and talking about the coronavirus. Whoa! As you move forward into your week, don't be worried about the coronavirus. All right? Keep your head. Keep your wits about you. Keep focused on what your problems are, because they're not going away. Oh no, they're waiting for you. So be ready. Charge at them full force, and whatever happens, I'll see you on the other side. Good luck. Take care. We'll just let Dave's theme play us out for a bit here. Oh yeah.